All right, Trails Collective crew. This is Ian from the Trails Collective. We are TC Live this week, and I am really excited to catch up with a friend, Gene Dykes. For those of you who don't know Gene, as I had put up in our title card that I shared some on Facebook, Gene is quite possibly the fastest individual alive, as well as toughest. And I suppose if you age grade that, it's quite possibly just faster than Usain Bolt, I would guess, particularly on the trails. I also mentioned he's kind of the Benjamin Button of the running world, where he seems to be getting faster and going longer as he gets younger in his years here. So I'm excited to catch up with Gene over this next hour or so. For those of you who may be on now, there's a couple of you who are maybe tuning in. Feel free to drop some questions in the comments there of Facebook or YouTube, and we will get it through to Gene here. And feel free to share a Gene story, or if you've got some sort of question, whether it be serious or whether it just be some fun side or tangent, for sure let us know, and we can dig into it. So for those who don't know Gene, pretty incredible, just an animal. I met Gene, I think, first time you just doing the Cayuga Trails 50, and thankfully being a familiar face that's come back year over year. But Gene, when I just pull up his ultra sign up results list, he's got 72 or 74 races over pretty much the past 10 years or so, and progressively getting longer. And so I'm going to run through that a minute, and then I'll break, and then we'll let you talk a little bit here, Gene, rather than me just talking at you. But for those of you who are tuning in, of those 72 results over the past 10 years or so, it looks like, Gene, you started into some of the trail space, at least in the results here formally, and I think it was 2010, I believe. And you started off with a half marathon, and then you've just progressively gotten longer. You did your first 100 in 2013, your first 200 around 2017. And whereas some people are just doing long trail stuff, you're flying on the roads too. So let's get into, I guess, a little bit of that. I mean, Gene, take us back a little bit. When did you really start, folks, when did you start running with some sort of consistency or in a competitive regard?
Oh, I've had kind of a start and stop career. I ran in high school and college, and was thoroughly unimpressive. I think the coach wanted to throw me off the team because I was really stinking up the joint. So I ended up doing field events to get points for the team. So, but that was important for where I am today, because I decided, hey, I stink as a runner, so I'm not going to, although I love running, I'm not going to try and do racing. And so my whole entire adult life, I ran, whenever I felt like it, sometimes in shape, sometimes not. But then along about when I was 56, I fell in with a bad crowd, and they only talked about racing. And so after 2 years running with them, I started doing racing. And my first race was a trail race, 7-mile trail race. And it was such a hoot. After 100 yards on the road, we were, jumping over tree trunks and, dodging all kinds of bushes and rocks and roots. And I had so much fun. My second race was a half marathon on the road. So I think subconsciously, and at some point consciously, I decided from this point on, I am either going to, I'm going to both run as fast as I can on roads and as far as I can on trails. Each year, try and do a little better than the previous year. And if you try and do just a little bit more, it doesn't take long before you're doing things which were, you'd have considered totally, out of the realm beforehand.
And so when you're saying just do a little bit better, I mean, this is you're able to return to some races like Cayuga, not like every year is the same, but I mean, are you weighing and judging that based on just how you're feeling? Are you looking at time? Are you looking at going a little bit longer each year? I mean, what's your metric?
Well, the Cayuga Trails 50 was my first ultra trail race. Well, no, probably the second or third, but it was the one that really turned me on to to running ultra trails because it's such a fantastic course. And I'd say that, after you've done 50, then I did 100. I skipped 100K in there somewhere. But once you've done a couple hundreds, then the only way to improve on that is, let's see, I think I did the Fat Dog 120. That was a step up. And then I really wanted to do one of the Candace Burt's 200-mile races. So I signed up for the Tahoe 200. And then I had to bail because it turned out to be my 50th high school reunion. 200s will always be there, but your 50th high school reunion will never return. So I did that.
But that would have been pretty burly in terms of an excuse of missing that 50-year reunion. Like, where's Gene? I mean, you're probably the only one in the history of the world that would have skipped their 50-year-old reunion for a 200-mile race.
I was a hit at the reunion, though, because they give out these questions. You go around and try and find people who have done this, have done that. And one of the questions was, find somebody who's run a marathon. And everybody was pulling blanks until they got to me. And I said, well, I've run about 100. So
is that literally what it's been at this point? Have you run 100 miles, or is that what you're talking about? Or
marathons or ultras combined, I've done 130. Mm-hmm. It's about, I could get the exact numbers, but it's about 70 marathons and 60 ultras at this point.
Yeah, which is, that's wild, right? And it's one thing if you're just out there plodding through, and I don't know what your effort. All right, so in some of these, and Grace, friend Grace just chimed in. She says, sounds like a great venue for a 50th reunion, and you can use them as a crew. So maybe on your 51st reunion, you can weave in one of these races, but you're not out there just plodding along. I mean, I don't know what you're comparing your. All right, so. For all of you who are tuning in, so Gene ran a marathon world record in 2018 at age 70 in 2 hours and 54 minutes. It's a 6:39 pace. So that's moving no matter how you cut it, let alone when you're factoring in your age. And when I just ran an age grade handicapping or whatever calculator, age graded, that comes out to a 2:03:06. For just an open marathon time, which is just nuts. And then, that factors through to some of the other distances as well. So what did that effort feel like out there, as well as what it did to your body in terms of what you needed for depletion and recovery versus some of these ultras that you're doing pretty well at as well?
At this point, I think ultras beat me up a lot more than marathons do, even though the vast majority of ultras, I'm just out there having a blast. I'm not really trying to run real fast. The last time I did try to run real fast in an ultra, I broke my shoulder. So that's going to, be weighing on my mind every time I'm out there from now on. But in marathons, most of you will know that the more in shape you get and the faster you get, easier it gets. I think my PR marathon there was probably the easiest PR marathon I'd ever had. I finished, I felt like I could have gone faster. You can, once you're really well trained, you run what you're trained to do. And training runs are harder because you're trying to push the envelope. And in a real race, you're trying to arrive at the finish line right at the limits of your ability. And if you do that successfully, you recover real fast. It's not uncommon at all for me to run, marathons on successive weekends. I mean, hard marathons. First time I broke 3 hours, I ran Boston the following weekend and set the course record there. So, one world record and followed by a national record or a Boston record on successive weekends. It can be done if you're in shape. The world is your oyster.
So, what's your fitness? So for those back-to-backs, maybe you're still doing that recently, but in that example, was that a couple of years ago, 10 years ago?
That was 2018.
20. Oh, so yeah, so recently. So even if you're pretty well fit, I mean, it seems like you're tapping the stores a bit to get in as fast as you're running. I mean, do you feel like you're laying it out there? I mean, there's a point where mentally you're conservatively kind of riding that fitness line? I mean, I guess that's a tough thing to quantify.
Oh, I like to think of myself as a myth buster. Uh, One of the common myths is you can only run two good marathons a year, or you just can't race too much. When I ran that 254 marathon, that was my 40th race that year, and I just with every race I got stronger. They were one weekend after the other. Uh, in fact, uh, okay, think of what the everybody says how you have to taper. Starting 3 weeks or 2 weeks beforehand. You got to start tapering. You got to cut down on the distance and the speed. 2 weeks before that world record marathon, I ran a 50K on Saturday and a hard marathon on Sunday, and a hard 5K the following weekend, and then went down to Jacksonville and ran that. So you can't tell me, that racing too much hurts. It's just hogwash. The more you race, the better you get.
And I guess I see that too. I guess there's a chicken and egg, right? I mean, do people not do it because their mind is pretty hook, line, and sinker kind of bought into that mentality? Is it more? I mean, I guess it's got to be a combination of, and let's in a minute maybe we can dig into this as well, is where you're kind of living the dream, where you're retired, right? You're not working.
Yeah, I have to say that you can only race as much as I do if you're retired, probably. So,
right.
not everybody can do that.
Yeah, retired, healthy, at least coming up with or finding the resources to commit to it. So that's probably a piece of the equation for people. But you're probably right. I mean, the bigger obstacle is probably the belief. And for some people, I don't know, maybe it is an actuality, but I am a believer also of racing into fitness in terms of just having a structured training program. But I think that there's a certain almost like build up, whether it's mental, emotional, whatever, to get into, I guess, that space where you have to almost experience and commit yourself and do it. But it's really interesting. I mean, in your experience, have you, I guess, interacted with others where you've been able to see them make the same, I think, choices, go in, try to double back, kind of unhardwire themselves from you can't race as much as you do with some success? I mean, I guess my question is, how much of that is you being a kind of physiological outlier as opposed to what anybody can, I guess, do?
Good question. Obviously, there's a genetic component. I've had friends I've run with for years, and they run often and they never get any better, and they sort of kind of reach their limit. But that said, I just spent a lot of time writing to some guy in England who wanted some tips, and I started writing down about 10 things that I do that a lot of other people don't. And you got to find what works for you. But I tend to do a lot of things that other people don't, and I don't think it's a coincidence that I am where I am.
Do you have those? Would that be? I mean, that sounds kind of interesting to me. Could you reel those 10 things off, or do you have them there?
Actually, I might have that list here. Reel them off? No.
Yep.
I'm
and while you're finding that or coming up with that, for those out there who again also aren't already acquainted with Gene and really what he's really showed to be possible, it was interesting. One of the articles, I think it was in, actually I don't remember what article it was in, but just basically here are the secrets to like Gene's success or times or fast things, and everybody wants to know that. Or like, I mean, what's your deal? What's your secret? And some of the things that you just mentioned were also upending some of those felt to be like no question concepts. Like you said, you never stretch, you don't do weights or really core work. and diet isn't anything too crazy. You just kind of go out there and run, and so it's kind of dispelling some of the things or some of what people would perceive to be, I guess, the science there.
All right. Well, why don't I run down through this list, and then you can
for sure
chime in with questions on ones you think are more interesting than others. So when I respond to this guy, I said, one thing is that I race more often than most people do. Actually, the number one issue, though, and I can't stress this enough, is that if you can afford a coach, that is the one thing you can do more than anything else. Of course, this is not a secret or anything, out of left field. Everybody knows that.
But how many coaches out there would probably say, you should race like twice a weekend, every weekend, and don't do any strength work? That would be some sort of, I don't know, some sort of, you'd have to do some digging to find those entities.
Well, it's been a learning experience for him too. I'm sure every time I signed up for an ultra, he would probably bang his head against the wall. But I think we're both on board now with the idea that if you spend some time developing your base doing ultra marathons, that it will improve your marathon times. And so he's come around. I mean, I didn't do it at first because I thought it would improve my marathon times. I've just always done what I want to do. Boy, did I want to do both. So I did. So if you can hire a coach, do so. But you don't have to do it immediately. I think I want to regress a little bit and say the biggest myth I want to bust is that you can't have as much fun running when you're old as when you're young. But look at it this way. When you're young and trying to be competitive, look at the people you're competing against. You're competing against Olympic caliber people. Unless you're anywhere close to that,
dude, you're an Olympic caliber person. I just gave you that age graded stat there where you're a 2:03.
Yeah, but when I was young, I couldn't beat the guys on my own team.
Dude, much less opponents. The Olympians now are either dead or they're having trouble getting out of bed, let alone back-to-back ultraing.
Yeah, but a lot of people think, man, I got to do it when I'm young because it's not any fun. But no, I mean, you've got the fact you're up against intense competition, you've got family, you've got job, and all these things which compete with your ability to train and run. If you just kind of do what I did and just kind of run casually until you're old, then you can have a chance to really kick butt. I mean, as you said, half my competition is 6 feet under now. So, and look at everybody who's ever won any major marathon ever, Boston, Chicago, whatever. Where are they now? You just can't run at a high level. I've heard 15 years from whenever you start is, the most that you can expect. And I'm in my 15th year since I started, so I'm a little worried that that's going to be the case. Joni is the only marathon runner I can think of. I mean, she's incredible. I mean, she's still killing age-graded scores, after, and she was, winning Olympics and stuff way back when.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good point too, right? Because there's then I don't know if discrepancy is the right word, but so you're kind of dispelling the notion where you can't do back-to-backs, you can't run a certain amount in a year, but you're wondering, and I guess maybe you'll still be that outlier that'll just keep going and going and going, but it's in your head that you may have a window. So for me, I think I started running competitively. I was pretty good. I wasn't great. I wasn't as good as you, but I was decent. And I think that was probably like in 6th or 7th grade. And like now for me getting out of bed, I mean, granted, I'm not getting much sleep these days with young kids and multiple businesses, and that plays into it. But man, my feet just are just sore, or it's the arthritis or whatever, just getting out of bed. So I can't even contemplate doing what you're doing, 30 or 40 years from now. And so maybe that speaks to now that I had been racing for like 30 years where, you have like 15 years of racing under your belt. So you're still a relative young buck at it.
Well, I have this other theory, which I don't know if it holds water or not, but I mean, so Ed Whitlock was sort of like that. I think that if you take a sufficient time off from a youth of extravagance in running, you can do a reset. In fact, my current career was preceded by 6 years of no running at all because of an injury. And I think that's one of the reasons, I can run so much better now is because I let my entire body heal for those 6 years. And it's sort of like it made me a beginner runner again, where I could just keep on improving over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm tangenting you in each one of these, but all right. So what was next up on that list on that top? Top 10?
Let's see. Let's see. Eating. A lot of people, eat too much, both before and during runs. A lot of people seem surprised that when I do a training run, I do it, in the morning, but that's 12 hours after my previous meal, and I won't eat anything for breakfast. I won't take any nutrition with me, and I can go out and run 20 miles. I mean, I don't feel like I'm in danger of bonking. Whereas other people, they'll eat a little beforehand and they'll sip on nutrition during their training. What you're doing is taking your body off the hook. The body says, oh, you're feeding me. I don't need to do anything better. But if you run fasted, you've got to store more glycogen. You've got to burn fat more efficiently. And I think training after fasting and not eating during the run, I think that's one of the secrets to my success, because you're teaching your body to do what it can on its own reserves. And then when you get into a marathon and you give it 900 extra calories, then you're really going to be able to do much better.
And Grace chiming in, half serious here. I thought eating too much was part of the fun of trail running, and I guess
well, that's different. Trail running, I just well, unless they're talking about training, if I trained in a trail run, I treat it the same way. But during a trail run, oh yeah, everybody loves pulling into an aid station and scarfing down food. I'm certainly in that crowd.
Which speaks to just part of the community of it as well. And
yeah. Although the people who are winning the races, they're not pulling into an aid station and chowing down. I mean, they have to also get by on whatever they've stored and good fat burning, because they can't eat a bunch and then go out slow and let it digest a little bit before they pick up the pace. I mean,
but they're also out there right half the time of some of the kind of closing finishers. So some of them might be out there. For instance, Cayuga, the winner coming through in 7 hours or whatever, versus the individual that's coming through in 14 hours. I guess a little bit different. I mean, maybe not. I mean, maybe that's the thing that we're questioning here, is the caloric equation or needs for that.
Well, there's three ways your body gets calories, the way I see it. You burn fat, you burn glycogen, and you eat food. And eating food is by far the worst way to get it, because if you're running and you've got food in your stomach, then that's blood that has to go to your digestive system. And that's blood that doesn't go to your muscles. And it's, it's really a very small benefit of getting food from getting calories from food while you're running. I only do it on trail running when I'm running easy anyway, or in a marathon when I need that extra boost to avoid bonking at the end.
And what's your go-to in those two situations? Like, what are you using when you're doing when you're running that 254 marathon, or when you're doing the 200s? I mean, what's your body calling for? What's your go-tos?
Oh, yeah, that's something big. It's one of my secrets. No, secrets. I discovered Mountain. Most people know Mountain. I use the 360 powder. It's just a total game changer for nutrition in a marathon. I used to use Hammerhead. I was able to get maybe 300 calories down without getting sick.
And we used Heed or Hammer in the early years of Iroquois and Virgil Crest ultras on course, and it just seemed like half the field, or those of us who were using it early on, this would have been 15 years ago or whatever, 10 years ago, we just started referring to it as Heave, just because we just turned on it. Like, we couldn't keep it down, and entrance couldn't keep it down. And so, but sorry, you can keep going there.
No, that's right. of course, I can't keep much of anything down. So it was like the best of the alternatives. But at the Jacksonville race, when I ran that marathon, I managed to knock down 960 calories of that stuff. And I was still hungry, sort of, I mean, it's just incredible stuff. So I use it in a very competitive marathon to give me that extra energy to power through. But it also has the quality that it has zero stomach upset. And I use it in ultras if I start getting nauseated, because you know how that you can get that death spiral. You can't eat, so you get worse, and pretty soon you're dropping out. But if I get to the point where I can't eat anything, then I switch to mountain, and that gets calories into me, and it doesn't upset my stomach at all.
So you're using that as a backup or as an alternative resort? Or are you going with other things first, or do you have planned kind of interconnections with that, Martin?
Yeah, in ultras, I'm talking about using it at like mile 60 or 70 of a longer race. I don't think I've ever used it for anything shorter. Yeah, I kind of switched to it at the first hint of nausea, and it gets me through. And sometimes, I didn't switch soon enough, and I regret it, because it's not cheap stuff, but still you're being penny wise and pound foolish. You're out there, you spent a couple $100 on entry fees and $600 traveling, and I'm afraid to use up a few $3 packets of Martin.
Totally,
it's crazy.
Especially if it changes your experience, right? I mean, that if it means the difference of stomach upset and you just feeling awful for like a couple hours versus, then it should be no question there.
I was trying to set a bunch of national records on the track in a 24-hour race, and I had to switch to mountain about 60 miles in, and I didn't bring enough. I called my wife at 3 a.m. and woke her up and said, "You got to go out and bring me some more of that stuff." And I couldn't have done it without it.
And then do you end up staying on it, or does it kind of balance out your system and then you move back to other foods or drinks? Or
still trying to figure that out, but I think I've been able to switch back to real food at some point. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a little hump you got to get over.
Yep. And then you said in at least that article that I read, otherwise there's nothing too remarkable about your diet. I mean, you try to pay attention, try to have a pretty healthy diet, but there's nothing too remarkable about it per se.
Nothing remarkable about a seafood diet. If I see it, down the hatch.
It's good.
So
good. All right, what's next on the list aside?
All right. Well, I think a lot of people, I only recommend this, I guess, if you really want to get the most out. But a lot of people don't realize how important weight is. I mean, that's sometimes the hardest part of my training, is keeping my weight down. I like to eat like anybody, but when the rule is 2 seconds per pound per mile. And if you get on the scale and say, gee, if I lost 5 pounds, that would be almost 5 minutes in a marathon, and you're trying to set a record, that's huge. So if you're really competitive, you really have to get your weight down to as low as it is and still be healthy. And
which is right. And so how about for you? I mean, because that can be a slippery, I don't know whether slippery slope is the right term or phrase for it, right? I mean, given the amount of I guess eating disorders or body issues that there are, particularly in endurance sports and running, that can be a really tricky topic. I'm not disagreeing that, and I guess that's an unfortunate thing where you see some of the runners with eating disorders, where the reality is that you can perform better for a little bit at the lower, if not unhealthy weight. It's not going to be sustainable. Maybe your body isn't doing, it's not going to hold it, right? You're going to have any number of health implications later, and it's just not healthy. But to your point, I mean, weight does make a difference.
Yeah, it depends on what you mean. I said, I said right up front that you got to get your weight down as much as possible, but still be healthy. And clearly, at some point, yeah, you might even be able to get a few more seconds off, but it isn't healthy, and so you just don't want to do that.
And have you? I mean, you're pretty thin and athletic build. Has your body changed much over the years? I mean, is something like, right? Because I guess it's a little bit different for different individuals in terms of how their body processes calories at all and how they're storing it, and a little bit trickier to make changes there. I mean, do you think that that's different for you or easier for you? I mean, would your body really put on weight if you weren't really paying attention?
That's certainly easy to do. I think when I probably took up running, I was probably in my mid 150s. I weigh 140 now. Most of that came off naturally, though. I think your body says, "Whoa, he's serious about this running stuff. I better shed a little weight. I'm going to feel a little better." And so most of that has come down. I think I would be about 144, just from the fact that I run a lot more than I used to. But to get from 144 to the 137, I'd like to be at for a marathon. That means I have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, your level again. Talking about how quick you're running in these times, it does. I guess you're through intention, hard work, miles, but it also sounds like just some genetic gift there, where your body's able to process things pretty well and stay pretty thin just on its own, so long as you're somewhat attending to it. But to your point, yeah, when you're talking about world record times, then that difference of just 4 pounds can make a difference.
yeah, and a genetic component, I've never heard any theories about it, but it's clear to me that my whatever genetic advantage I have has only kicked in when I'm old, because I wasn't, I just was a mediocre runner, and I worked hard. I trained real hard as a kid, but I was just ordinary. But now I'm not, and I don't know why.
They need to get you in the lab, man. They need to hook you up with all sorts of sensors and leads and whatnot. So I guess let's go there. Just for as a tangent here, I was kidding there, but have you had some of the XFIZ testing done to really see how, I guess, efficient your body is, or what your VO2 is, or things along that line?
Actually, yes. Some folks from the University of Delaware did a study on me, and they published it in the New England Journal of Medicine. And it was all a little bit over my head. I'm not a real technical runner. I never go by, training. If you have a Garmin watch, you've got all these things. I don't pay any attention whatsoever. All I do is do what my coach tells me to do. But they determined that while my VO2 max, or something like that, might not be extraordinary, I seem to be able to maintain it just way longer than normal. I guess the easiest way to demonstrate what makes me a little different marathons is that my half marathon pace is 6:34. And that was a national record. I ran hard, PR, 6:34 pace. My marathon pace is 6:39, only 5 seconds per mile slower. And that's only, I guess, about 4 minutes. I have a 126 PR in the half and 254. I'm running each half marathon almost as fast as my PR half marathon, and I just seem to be able to maintain a pace longer than most people can.
Yeah. So probably wouldn't be fun for the listeners in terms of. So my mind's kind of spinning on that and wanted to dig in, but we'll move off that just because it's probably not much fun for other people to be digging into the XFIZ stuff and thinking about those concepts. Yeah. Scurry says, so is a 200 miler on the schedule again at the moment? And we're going to go back to your list, but let's take some interludes here.
Well, I'm running out of things on the list, so I appreciate these comments from the viewers. Let's see. I've got my longest race yet coming up on May 3rd. It's the Cocodona 250. 250 miles point to point from starting just north of Phoenix and ending up in Flagstaff. It should be incredible, just, I mean, it's something I'm really like. Every 200 I've done has been just an amazing experience. It's a totally different animal than a 100. It's something that, well, if you do 100, you're doing it in a day and you're trying to do it pretty hard. But 90% of the field in a 200 is just out, just running with just barely within their capabilities and, finishing days behind the leader. But doing something for 4 straight days, and just taking maybe an hour and a half nap now and then, it really, really penetrates your psyche. It's an amazing thing. So this 250 will outdo the Moab 240, which was 238 miles. And later on this year, I'll be doing the Bigfoot 200 again, which, people ask me, what's my favorite race? Well, I say, all the 200s are my favorite races. Anything shorter than that, it's the Cayuga Trails 50. I'm not just saying that because it's such an amazing race. I'm probably preaching to the choir out there, but if you haven't done the Cayuga Trails 50, get to it. It's just such a great race. Every year I go back and say, it can't be as good as I remember. And it's always wonderful.
I did shake up the course last year and this year. It's tougher than it's ever been. There was we're having a conference. Somebody was looking, I think, at the course times or records or talking about the times there. And the first couple of years where I had a big prize person was getting the big draw and where the record set by Sage and some of the faster people. Actually, I think I was having this discussion about Virgil because I just changed that course as well. But it's definitely a tougher course, a lot more elevation gain. I've got some more single track. I've got some off-camber terrain in Cayuga course. So some of those top times, I don't think they'll ever get touched. But I think I like this course, which you haven't seen yet, probably not any of the prior versions.
Oh, I'll be looking forward to that.
So when you talk about the 200s and so 4 days, hour and a half of sleep or so, any fun kind of loopy, just kind of depleted experiences out there?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people report hallucinations. I haven't had any hallucinations, I don't think, on a 200. I had some on the Fat Dog 120 because in that race I went 48 straight hours without a break. I made the cutoff by 20 minutes, so I used up all the time. And I saw some pretty strange things there. But in a 200, it isn't, believe it or not, it isn't the distance that's a problem. I've reached the end of every 200 and said, oh, I could keep running for a couple more days because, how you feel keeps going down and down until you reach this baseline. And then you're existing, solely on what little food you can get in you and burning fat. And it's the bottom. You can't dip below that without a death spiral and going out of the race. So you can just keep going forever once you reach that steady state. But sleep deprivation is just really awful. You'll be going along. It's not a problem during the day. I know biorhythms keep you awake during the day, but at night you can be going, and then all of a sudden your vision starts narrowing, and the way I see it is your brain is so tired that it says, I can't process all that stuff. Normally you can recognize what's off to the sides, but at some point your brain just gives up, says, I can't handle all that stuff. And it starts making up stuff. I see highways and roads and bushes and trees that aren't there. And it's all you do is just look to the side and you can see that what you think is there is not there at all. And of course, I'm not quite too sure that what I see straight ahead of me is there too.
There either?
But it is so terrible. The way to get through it, if you're not at an aid station and you don't feel like curling up right in the middle of the trail and taking a nap, you have to take a caffeine tablet. That'll work for about 3 hours, and but you get to an aid station, take an hour and a half nap, and that's enough to go, the rest of the night in general. It's amazing how little sleep you can get by on, but it's amazing how bad you feel when your body just decides that enough is enough. Oh, you can also take a lot of little mini naps. Believe it or not, I'll just go up and lean my head up against a tree for like 30 seconds, and that's enough to go another half hour. Another thing I'll do is I'll sit down on a rock and take my poles and kind of lean against them and sleep until you slip off them, and that wakes you up, and then
it's go time.
And then it's go time. Yeah. So a lot of little ways to get a little break in there.
So word to those out there: if you see Gene kind of hunched over on his poles, you just leave him alone.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, are you out there solo in these long efforts? Are you a fan of pacers?
No, I am not a fan of pacers in anything, I guess. As far as I'm concerned, the only justification for pacers is safety. You can be alone out there, and it's good to have somebody with you if something goes wrong. But in general, I don't use a crew or a pacer. I mean, a crew can be nice. You can curl up in their car and have anything stored up. But between drop bags, aid stations, and carrying what you have, there really is no need for it. I kind of like you never know what's going to happen when you're out there running. You don't know who you're going to join up with, and if you're running all alone in the middle of the night, that's just great. I never listen to music in a trail race, that's for sure. But just listening to my footfalls for hours on end, listening for the occasional animal noise, it's just wonderful.
And you're choosing some pretty beautiful places out there. I mean, you mentioned Fat Dog, you mentioned Tahoe. I mean, I guess that's the nature of some of these 200s, but some of the hundreds you've chosen too are pretty beautiful locations. I mean, you're definitely choosing your races with intention.
Yeah, some of them I'm choosing. Well, there's the Western States angle. You have to if you want to keep staying in the lottery, you've got to pick a Western States race, and that's not done so much by let's pick the best race I can, but when can I fit it into my schedule? And that's why I've done Rocky Raccoon several times, because it's real early in the year, real convenient time. It doesn't interfere with marathon training. And I learned that not all Western States qualifiers are equally easy or hard. I did the Tarawera 100, and it had the same cutoff time as Rocky Raccoon. And Rocky Raccoon I could do in 24 hours. Tarawera took me 32 hours. I mean, you can, so it was 8 hours harder than Rocky Raccoon, but they had the same cutoff time, 30 hours. So I have to find another qualifier.
And is that so? I imagine you've been in the Western States pool for a number of years now.
Well, I have kind of a sad story there. I was in for 3 or 4 straight years, and then one year, I don't know, it just never got on my radar. I didn't hear anybody talking about it, and I missed registration. Mm-hmm. And so my tickets went back down to 0. And so now I'm back up to I don't know, 4 or 8 tickets. Not quite sure how many. I'm not likely to get in until I'm late 70s now, but I'd really like to get in, not this year but next year, because then I could be the oldest ever finisher. So,
and what's that age at the moment?
Somebody did it 2 years ago at age 73, and I'll be 73 this year.
And how long did it take that person?
They actually did pretty well. They did it in 28 and a half hours, I think.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been traveling quite a bit, particularly in COVID. I think in just like this past COVID stretch, you've been able to race in Arizona, Texas, California, New Zealand. You've still been getting out there.
Well, let's see. No, I guess my only races that I've traveled to were recently. I went to Florida twice and Arizona in December, January, and February. So those are my three COVID races.
Okay. Is that something that's I mean, I imagine you're aware of it. Do you have, I mean, I guess we don't need to dwell there. It's probably not that much fun, but I mean, some concern there when you're, I mean, do you feel pretty good about the way races are being run? I mean, you're,
Yeah, I don't. The, the races, I mean, you're outdoors. I think. I mean, certainly, I'm a big mask believer. I wear them, when you can't social distance and so on. But I think everybody treats masks now sort of like vitamin pills. They say, well, if one is good, maybe 1,000 a day or even better. And if you're outside just casually passing by somebody, your chances of getting COVID are zero. Yet you'll go out and see people wearing masks like they think it's going to jump out of the woods and attack them. It's just nuts. People should be encouraged to get out there in the great outdoors and leave their masks behind. And it'd be so much better for their mental health. It just isn't transmitted that way. I mean, and even indoors, if both parties wearing masks, I think the vast majority of cases come from people who are unprotected and put themselves in dangerous situations. If you're careful, and particularly if you're outside, I'm just not worried at all. Doesn't mean I won't get it, but
Yeah. How about, so you had referenced, some people ask about some of the favorite races historically. Are there any certain, I guess, so this is something after Michael Ortiz's Hundos project, I was just really curious at some point in his hundreds project, where along, I guess, were the moment or a moment where he just stopped to really appreciate and just be grateful for, I guess, where he was and able to do what he's doing. I mean, I guess for you, it does really seem like you're living in a pretty amazing, man, I guess I would guess that all of us would. So, and I shouldn't say this, right? I don't know enough about you to know if there's other parts of your life that aren't as, rosy from the outside, but from my vantage point, though, it's amazing. I mean, you've got your health, you've got your wife, you've got flexibility, the resources. And
yeah, you forgot two great kids.
Two great kids, right?
Yeah.
So kudos and the luck of the draw to like all of those things. But are there any specific moments out there where, I mean, maybe it's a regular occurrence where you just kind of stopped and really just appreciated just, I guess, how amazing, I guess, you are, but also your path right now and that the places that you're going and been. I mean, is that a regular thing or anything where you can recall just stopping and just totally appreciating that moment?
I think kind of the way it manifests itself is I'll be somewhere and I'll think, so many people will never have this experience. They don't even know what they're missing. It's not like they say, oh, well, I couldn't get up there in the mountains, but they don't even know that being up in the mountains is an amazing experience. And that there's just so much more to the outdoors than a scenic viewpoint off the highway. And that's why one of the reasons why I push people to do trail running so much is that, I mean, what could be better? I mean, you're out there, you're running, which is fun. You're in the great outdoors. You're seeing incredible scenery, and of course, you're out there with the world's most wonderful people. If you had to pick one person to be stuck with for the rest of your life, and it had to be a random person, you would say, okay, random, but make it a trail runner. They're all just, you can just go up to any trail runner and almost be assured that there's a friend on the other end.
And that was my hope really with this Trails Collective project at all. I think it was so the slogan, which I'll use here and there, is just connected by trails. And there was I think when I was running for Congress for the couple of years and really getting out there and really talking to people and what I was really enjoying in living in such divided I shouldn't say divided, maybe divided, polarized communities, both politics as well as in just the communities themselves. Trail running and that community really seemed to bridge those gaps. I mean, you can be coming from very polarized angles, but you share this at least one very wonderful thing in the mix, which would be trail running. And you end up having so much more in common rather, and it really does connect us, and it really is a pretty amazing community. And so it was my hope through this Trails Collective project to really, I guess, expand that and really connect more of us together and open up our, I guess, exposures to maybe races that weren't on our radars, or like what I'm working on in the back end right now, the deeper dive into event metrics. And I think in this past week, I've been really like 100 of the top races. I'm taking the elevation. I'm taking basically the GPX course files, running them through 3 different mapping software programs, getting an average, dividing by the mile. Basically, what I'm trying to do is open us up to, I guess, some pretty awesome races and events and communities that are out there. But long-winded way to say I totally agree with what you just said, and it's an amazing community.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe one of the last people I'd ever want to be stuck with is a politician, though. So I'd be hard pressed to know which person you are if you manage to get successfully elected. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that we have people out there who can't run around the block deciding what runners are allowed to do. And the same thing is in almost any other field. People who can't even manage their own finances are making economic decisions for the whole country. It's just a terrible, terrible thing. But we don't want to bring politics.
Yeah, totally. I don't need to say there. All right, so Eddie, I think people can see the screen when I make it visible there, but it says, "Hey Gene," and this is Eddie Pantoja. Hey Gene, how do you deal with chafing in your long runs?
Chafing?
Yep.
I guess I'm pretty lucky. I just don't ever have chafing problems. I never get blisters. So no no advice. I just doesn't happen.
Again, you're an outlier, man. I mean, the person that doesn't get any shaving, especially as long as, are you doing anything particular in those long efforts for like foot care or anything different?
No, just
no.
I might change my socks occasionally, but basically I put on my best socks and my best shoes. And why would you want to change to your second best ones?
What's your best socks? What's your preference?
Oh, well, actually I've got a gazillion pairs of socks. One thing I do not need any more of is socks. They're all good. I have, I've got right socks and Balegas and this and that and the other. They're all good. I mean, if I had propensity to blisters, maybe I might be able to see the difference between one and the other, but I don't have any problem with any of them. So.
Yeah, and for sure, for those of you who are tuning in out there, these questions are fun too. So if anything off the top of your head, weigh in. There was one, JJ Durand, in a message had, I think he had read the post or maybe an article on, and I forget exactly the situation. Maybe it was, I can't remember whether it was around the World Championship marathon, or maybe it was one of the others where you had said it and like the race wasn't sanctioned or something like that. So
well, that would have been that marathon that you
there was that
mentioned in the introduction. That the guy, I knew that there are certain restrictions, and I knew this guy was a good race director. And I said, "Is there any reason that if I ran a record there, it wouldn't count?" And he said, "No, come on down." And then he didn't sanction the race. So I've never had a good explanation of why. But I should have been more proactive. It's just my own fault. I ran a race that wasn't sanctioned. I should have known it ahead of time.
For him, I think it was speaking though to your character in terms of just, I guess you could have been the individual that turned around and was spiteful or whatever, angry or whatever, but you kind of were respectful and rolled with it, and that was just kind of like, that's how it goes.
The way I see it, if that was my one shot, I just would have been a one-shot wonder. I don't, I'm good enough to gain that notoriety. I want to be able to do it more than once.
So you had mentioned one of the 200s or the 250 coming up being, you're excited to, it'll be your new long run. Do you have other bucket list races that you'd really like to get into and do?
Well, I was signed up to do the California Untamed 330, so 330 miles. That was postponed last year because of COVID, and it's postponed this year because of those fires they had. They just don't think they can clear the trail by this summer, so they're postponing that till next year. But 330 miles. Boy, I can only hope it's even better than a 200.
How many people are they getting for that? Or I guess it was postponed, so you don't know. But I mean, those long ones. I mean, how many people are signing up for that?
Ooh, I don't know. I'd guess they'll probably have, 70 to 100, but hard to say. I mean, 200s are getting so many, more and more popular, and a lot of those people who are doing 200 are saying, "Well, what can I do next?" And
Yeah.
Well, and the answers to most of these things are an ultra sign up. That's
Yeah.
another thing. Any race directors out there, if you are on ultra sign up, make sure you turn on the entrance thing. I mean, it's something you have to turn on, and
Yeah.
I want to know who I'm running with. It's just crazy when I can't see.
Sometimes I do forget that, but it also drives me crazy too when it's not on there.
Mhm.
So Eddie also said, "Do you ever lose a toenail?"
Well, blisters, chafing, I never have, but yeah, I've kicked a few rocks, and um, I may have even just lost a few from, just general running, or maybe they got pinched or something. But probably most of the times I've lost, it's because I've kicked a rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably the rock's fault, though. I mean, you're
Well,
right,
this usually happens on multi-loop courses because, somehow the rocks get about an inch bigger every time around the loop, and it's just not fair that they're higher than they used to be.
And then Masood, question: do you refuel? Let's see. Do you refuel to maintain your weight after training all the long? Well, I guess this speaks to. I didn't bring this up earlier. You're doing some long races, relatively long. I guess that's a subjective concept at this point. But on weekends and back to back, are you doing a lot during the week? Like, what's your weekly volume looking like for these?
Oh, I only average about 45 miles a week, I guess. I mean, it comes out to about 2,800 miles a year, and that's averaging over everything. If I'm deep into marathon training, it's probably going to be 50, some 50 or 60-mile weeks. But in general, it's about 45-mile weeks.
And is that a quality session or a speed session in there each week?
Oh yeah. My coach has, he really mixes things up. He never gives me the same workouts, and but still, you can't vary too much. You've got the long runs, you've got the tempo runs, you've got the intervals, you got the rest, the recovery runs. So, he mixes them up a lot. Now, refueling.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I think, oh man, I'm going to do a 100-mile race or a 200-mile race. I'm going to lose a lot of weight, and this time I'm going to keep it off. And I think I do lose 3 or 4 pounds during a 200, but I usually gain it all back and more within 2 days. So, I wouldn't recommend running 200s as a weight loss scheme.
All right. So I think I maybe went into another question. You mentioned the California 330, but so no necessarily like bucket list races after that. Nothing you've really wanted to get to, whether it be other hundreds or 50s or whatever.
Well, we could spend the next half hour going through all the races that are sort of on my radar.
So you've got a pretty deep radar. I mean, there's a bunch.
I've got a sheet somewhere that by month races, so I need to remind myself. And it's so easy to forget these races. So I'll see it on the web, and I'll just grab the link and put it in a folder somewhere. Every once in a while, I go through and try and find ones I've forgotten about. But nothing is more true than so many races, so little time.
Yeah. And you're in. Okay. Yeah. Actually, that I won't go with that tangent. Let's see. So we're coming up to an hour here. I'll try not to hold you much longer here. I really respect your time. Anything else that we could dip into that might be pretty fun, or any of you listening out there? Any other questions for Gene?
Well, I'm having great fun. I sure hope if anybody's got a question they want to ask, they throw it out there. Those are always the most fun. Find out what people are really interested in. Is there something, if you ask the viewers a question, would there be any way to see the answers? Probably not. I mean, ask how many of them have done 100? How many have done a 200?
Yeah, if they comment in the comment thread, we should be able to see it. And I guess that was any of you watching right now. Any of you done a 200?
Yeah.
And
Is
then,
there anybody here who, because this crazy old guy was on, are you now thinking about doing a 200? That would be joy to my heart if I've converted one single person out there.
and while they're potentially chiming in here, that was a question I had when you mentioned the California 330. Right, I start as you're going up in miles here. I'm thinking, all right, you're getting crazier and crazier here. So, does it seem to be kind of the same community and personality of runners? I mean, or is it kind of distinctive communities in these 200s, or what you perceive to be like the 300s, or they're just a lot of I don't know, kooky
Yeah.
ultra distance out there.
Usually I'll go to a race and I'll know one or two others, but it's pretty rare that I'll know too many more than that. People are moving up, and there's getting to be so many races now that you're not likely to see. Somebody just told me there's an East Coast Triple Crown of 200s. I don't think I'd heard of that. So
actually, I just saw that as well, right? And there was as I'm researching all these races, I think maybe the Wild Oak was maybe in there, and there was another.
There's one across Florida 200. I know that one. Yeah, and it's important to note that we're talking about races that are point to point or single loop, or at least not many loops, because 200s and longer have existed for a long time, but they've all been short loop courses done, multiple times.
And any appeal there for you? I mean, the New York City, whatever it's called, the one that goes around the 1 mile park for,
well, my first 200 was the race for the ages. The Barkley Marathon Sky. It was a race where you got 1 hour for every year of your age to run as many miles as you could. And I went down and ran 205 miles in 68 hours. And that was a 1 mile loop. Boy, do you get to know a course well.
Every stone and pebble on that.
I've run 100 miles plus on a track in 24 hours, but I haven't done a 48-hour yet. It's, I do it for the challenge. A lot of people do that for fun. It isn't fun for me. I might do it just to see if I can do it or to set a record, but I don't know. I guess, I'm a reluctant short loop race kind of guy.
And so Eddie, who's also chiming in, who's also got some endurance genes and mentality there for going long. First said, are you a cold or warm runner? And then the next one was, which, do you ever think about sprinkling your eyes with salt when the sleep deprivation is just too crazy?
Boy, hard enough to see without putting salt in my eyes.
Is that something? So Eddie out there listening, are you when you're going long out there? Is that something you're taking to?
No, getting suntan lotion in my eyes is excruciating enough. But the hot or cold runner, it depends what kind of running we're talking about. Training, I love cold work. I love running in the winter. I don't really like hard workouts in the winter, but just recovery runs and running through the snow and on ice and that's a lot of fun. But racing, I seem to have a competitive advantage on warm days. When I ran that PR marathon, the temperatures were in the 60s, humid. A lot of people were wilting in the heat, and I just never even noticed. So I do, but it's interesting. I'm a firm believer that you can train your body to do almost anything, and your body responds to training. And I ran the Miami Marathon once, and it was just terrible. I just totally crashed and burned, and I said, I've got to do something about that. So I entered the Desert Rats stage race. It's 120, 140 miles from Grand Junction, Colorado to Moab. And I kid you not, at the finish line, it was 115 degrees. And we ran 26 miles that day. I have never had the trouble with the heat since then. So if you've got a shortcoming, do something to push the envelope there. Your body will respond.
That's broiling.
But it was a dry heat,
Yeah.
Running at 90 degrees humid would be far worse.
Does TC have a Strava group? There is one out there. Our friend Pete Krisak created a Strava group, and I think we just embedded it onto the Trails Collective website recently. So you can check that out. I have a Strava account, but I'm not a user really. So that's kind of still foreign to me, but I believe there is one there. Thank you so much for asking on that.
Mm-hmm. I upload my stuff to Strava, and I used to just put it there, but enough people pestered me to say something about my training runs that I try and put in some good commentary every day, and that's where I get some of the feedback where people said, "Wow, now I'm trying more than I used to," and of course that's really my mission is to get people to realize there's so much more they can do with running than what they thought.
So how's that? So on that, you're relative. I guess we're talking about a niche kind of cult audience here, but you're relative. At least in my head, you should be a relative rock star in how well you've done. I mean, that's gotten you some press, some attention, some community around it. Is that? I guess.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, long after my celebrity should have waned, I still get the occasional request like this. Uh-huh. So I kid you not, when I finished that marathon, I didn't tell anybody I was going to try and set a record because I'd come up a little short at Toronto, and you don't want to be known as a serial failure, and mm-hmm. I hadn't exactly trained for it in a traditional manner. I mean, but when I finished that race, all I was thinking is, oh, great, now I can concentrate on ultra trail running I'll post about it on Facebook, and maybe a few friends will, congratulate me. I mean, I had no idea that news of that would take off in the fashion it did. And of course, well, I'm happy about it just because, well, it helps me to get the word out. Hey, we old guys can have a lot of fun.
Can I guess it's tough that there would for sure be probably a difference in the amount of attention or support that you get. I mean, you should be on par with, I don't know, like for sure getting support or sponsorships or something, or even when you talk about getting into Western, is that something that you'd like to do? It would seem like you'd have the same shot that anybody else with kind of pull or would. Have anybody approached you, or have you been interested in being an ambassador or picking up any sponsorships? Or
actually, no, I have not. Nobody's ever approached me. I kind of figure you got to look at it this way. I'm not exactly the demographic that a lot of these companies are eager to find. But one of my friends said, if I were Nike, I'd hire you like that and say, this 70-year-old guy ran a 2:54 marathon. Just think what you could do in our shoes, So, but
what are you wearing? What's your preferred?
Well, I've got about 16 kinds of shoes. I mean, there's trail shoes and road shoes and training shoes and technical.
What's been your go-to road trainer and trail trainer of this past?
Oh, when one wears out, I just go out and get another one. Right now, I'm in Brooks Triumph ISO 2s. They're really comfortable. For marathons, competitive races, I use the Nike 4% or Next Percent or whatever. I mean, they really do make a difference. And they've got competition now, but I haven't tried any of those. For ultras, I'm very fond of the Brooks Caldera. Really comfortable. I put my feet in those, and they feel great. I never want to change out of them. They lose their lugs a little easily. It's okay because it's good for trail races that are only moderately technical. I'd need something a little more aggressive if I did really technical ones, but most of mine are, well, I don't do a lot of the really technical ultras because I'm reduced to walking and I want to run. And so it's not that I can't do them, but it's just not my style to do a really highly technical race.
Yeah. What's your she was back there when we first started talking tonight. What's your wife think?
Oh, well, it's all come on kind of gradually for her too. She knew she's known I've always liked running, and maybe I won a local race, and yay, and then I win a few more, and it's my kids are also. I run with my kids. I do a marathon or two each year with them, and one of them has made a website for me. If anybody wants to go to ultrageezer.com, you can always find my current race schedule there. I'd like to get in a little more content than I have, write some bloggy type things. I'll get around to it one of these days. But so they're all following my career avidly.
Well, kudos to them too, and kudos to her. Hopefully it's really fun to watch, but as much as you race, it seems like you're probably on the road out there as well. And there's got to be, I don't know, is she concerned for you? I mean, you're going out in these 200, 250 mile races. They're just like, oh, no, Gene's
I mean, maybe a little bit. The trouble is, a lot of these, they have trackers, right? Yeah. I don't think I've been on a single 200 where the tracker didn't show me wandering through the wilderness or stop for days on end. And I don't know. I don't know if it's bad luck or just all trackers fail, but they just haven't worked too well. So I bought my own tracker. I think I'll take it along in addition to whatever the official tracker is, and hope that they'll be able to follow me one way or another.
I haven't been a tech guy historically, but I've, for whatever reason, just the past couple of weeks, I do have a Garmin watch. I use it typically for mapping courses when I'm out there creating courses and exploring new places or whatever. But I've been wearing it the past couple of weeks, and it's got one of the emergency notification features or whatever. And I don't even really know how it works, but I pushed some button just in passing and rolling up a sleeve on the run the other day, and it just activated like the emergency, like it was sending a message out to my wife when I was running. I don't have my phone with me. So I was just kind of looking up the sky. I was like, I don't know what to do now. Like, stop, don't send that message. Like,
don't send a helicopter.
All right. Thank you, Gene, for your time. It is fun. I could keep going. I still got to do the weekly rundown, filming tonight, and video editing to get it live for tomorrow. So I am going to peel off. Anybody out there, any last minute comments for Gene? Comments or questions from the gallery out there? And anything else, in case any comments come in, and there wasn't anything else on that secret top 10 list of yours, Gene, that we cut you off from?
Oh, boy. I think there was only one left. During the one thing the guy asked was, he says, I always tend to peter out after about 30K, and the last 12K is. And so I said, a lot of the other things that I said that address that. But in training, it's important to always finish strong. If I'm doing interval training, I always run each mile faster than the last one, or each rep. If I'm doing a long tempo run, every mile's got to be faster than the previous one. Your body, you got to teach your body that, the best is yet to come in a race. And I don't know, people just refuse to try and run a negative split. I mean, it's a fact that virtually every world record is a negative split. And yet I'll be in races time after time, passing the same people mid-race. It's just, why would they want to finish dragging their asses across the finish line when they could finish strong? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
That's me, man. I'm too weak between the ears. I'm crumbling mid-race all the time, and just waiting to get eaten up. So, man, I wish I could make that work. But
I don't think I'll ever run a 50 mile or 100 mile as a negative split. There are people who try and do even paces on these 48-hour track races. I don't know. I don't know if I could ever talk myself into trying that. It's just easier to me to just run most efficiently for whatever condition you're in. that's got to be a little faster when you're fresh. And if you're trying to run intentionally slow at the beginning, you're just leaving something on the table.
Yeah. All right. So you had mentioned your website. Any place else that if you like people to reach out and find you?
Yeah, it should be easy to find. Facebook, Strava, my website, ultragazer.com. Yeah, pretty easy to find, and I love hearing from folks. I spend a lot of time on Facebook talking with other runners. My wife would claim I spend way too much time on Facebook, but then who doesn't? So, but don't mind hearing from anybody.
Cool. All right. Well, I will touch base with you more on Cayuga Trails, and hopefully we'll see what 2021 brings, and maybe we can talk later in the year again and see how your calendar went.
All right.
All right. Cool. Thanks so much, Gene. Thank you all who tuned in tonight. Thanks for those of you who asked some questions or made some comments, and we will catch you next round of the Trails Collective.
All right. And thank you for hosting such a wonderful race.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Thanks for the support.
Absolutely.
All right.
Bye.
See you.